Welcome to another exciting episode of Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. He was taken out of focus 1700 years ago by the early Christian leaders under Constantine, Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, converted Christians, pacifist, non-violent Christians, back into being Jewish and Christian to worship the two-headed God Yahweh of the Jewish religion and no longer worship the singular, divine, loving, spiritual creator and being in the heavenly spiritual world and consciousness of only love, which is the same spiritual body you have with you right now, which is only empowered by spiritual loving life force from the heavenly spiritual world and the spiritual loving spiritual mind or creator. That's the second body you have with you right now. So Jesus, unfortunately, his teachings were then poisoned, further distorted, and even the book of Revelation, which is the book of Daniel, an evil, violent book portraying Jesus as Satan coming on the clouds to murder and kill, throw people into hell, cause starvation and wars and famine. That's an evil book and must be removed from all the Bibles in the world that are Christian. It's the Jewish book of Daniel. They can have it. They can have that rubbish if they want it, the book of Daniel, and their war god. They can have a schizophrenic god. You have to remember, Yahweh is not monotheistic. It only has a monotheistic body called Yahweh with two heads. One is a war god, brutal, killing, thieving, murdering, genocidal war god, exactly the same war god as Mars, the Roman war god, Ares, the Greek war god, Sekhmet, the Egyptian war god. They are the same god. Yahweh one, I call it. It's a war god, brutal, killer. That's it. End of story. The Romans had a god of peace and love, Pax. Ares had Irene. The Egyptians had a god, I can't remember his name, but he was a mellowing god. He'd mellow you out, calm down, a calming god, to be more peaceful. But they all had different temples because they were opposing forces, black and white, evil and good, hate and love, murder and give life. The Jews, unfortunately, did a very deceitful thing. They called their god of love, instead of calling the god of love Amore or something like that. They said, let's call our God of love the same name as our God of filthy, stinking, murdering war, Yahweh. That way we've got this God of love and this murdering war God under the one name. Then we'll just build one temple and put them both in there. And we'll say it's the same God, which of course it's not. It's dualistic. There is a war God and a God of love like all the others. It's a very deceptive thing to do. Then the Jewish Christian churches today, and have for 1700 years, since the corruption around Emperor Constantine, they now unfortunately teach all children that are supposedly Christian, but they're Jewish Christians, to worship the two-headed God of the Jews. We're not Jews. We're Christians. I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16 or 17 because of this lie. There's not one God in the Bible. The Jews have two gods. And the divine source of Jesus' inspiration is pure love, and it's ultimate, in its ultimate identity. He had the clear light mind experience, so did Buddha. They both had perfect equanimity towards everyone, non-violent pacifists, both of them. So it was destroyed, the pacifist message was destroyed, the spiritual way to heaven was destroyed by Jesus' full teachings, but you still have in the Jewish Christian churches the charities. They come from Jesus, the good part, the new wine. So I had to write books about this because I didn't bother about it when I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church. I took Jesus with me. I went and studied Buddha's teaching. I knew he was a pacifist. And it's beautiful. His teachings about cleaning your mind out of the negativities is exactly the same teaching as Jesus. Clean the inside of the cup out. That's where all the dirt is. He's saying clean your mind out. And they're the same teaching. But Jesus had another higher level. He went into, from passive love, experienced the clear light mind connection to heaven. Buddha can teach you how to do that. Jesus then said, yep, experience that. I've done that. Now I'm going to go back in and help the poor, the outcast, the lepers, the sick. I'm going to go out and bring love to them. Now that's love in action. So, and that's another level. You see, he sort of stood on Buddha's shoulders and went into another whole level of selflessness. Serve others. Let go. Just bring love from heaven to them. Just be a conduit of love, because then you'll be in heaven anyway, and your body's temporary, your flesh. So I had to write a couple of books because I was pretty annoyed when I went around lately in the last 5 years, and I thought I'll investigate how they're teaching about Jesus. And blimey, a lot of the churches I went into were synagogues. The different denominations, they were just synagogues. All they banged on about was the Jewish Old Testament religion and Jesus is coming on the clouds to kill all the people or something. But save them, they'll be saved. I thought, oh, blimey, I better do something about this, Jesus, divine loving one. I'm just a gardener, but I'll give it a go. And they said, go ahead, Chris. You know we're just love and non-violence. They don't. So the Gospel of Jesus Unplugged is now available around the world for the last 12 months. It's a new translation of the Greek interlinear Gospels. It's in the traditional sort of format and style, but the words I use are different, such as instead of God the Father, I've got to cut all links from the Jewish religion. You have to cut the Bible in two. You've got to get the Jewish religion out of the Christian religion, separate them out, and rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. But so the Gospel of Jesus, for example, I don't say God the Father when Jesus is talking. I say the loving spiritual creator. She's love, or he's love, spiritual. Jesus said this being spiritual. And we have bodies like angels. They're spiritual bodies after we die, if we're ready, if we bring them alive now with love. So that gospel translation has removed a lot of the Jewish poison and overlays put onto him. And there has been some tampering with his words in those gospels. So that's a clearer, more easy to understand focus on his love message and how to transform yourself. The teachings of Jesus Unplugged will be published within about 7 days in 2026 January, first fortnight of January 2026. That's about to be published. Contact me at jcinfocusgmail.com if you want me to post you a copy, and I'll give you a price based on the wholesale that it costs me at the moment with some postage. So that's all happening. I had to do something, and the teachings of Jesus Unplugged is what I'm about to read. This is the book here, and the back cover. Is the spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. This is the daily prayer that I say to center myself into my spiritual body, because I know I've got one and I know it's going to leave when my physical body dies. I know that. And Jesus explains how to get into it, how to behave, how to live, how to help others, etc., how not to hurt others. This is the prayer. Every day I say this, and I focus on thinking I'm in my spiritual body of light and love, which I have with me and we all do. So I need to focus on I'm in it with all its characteristics. This is the prayer. Daily prayer to center yourself into spirit. I use the pronoun she, but if that makes you uncomfortable, use the word he. This spiritual being is beyond gender. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land, for this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven as she has guided me, through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be, just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. And the logo there, the Spirit Earth logo that I use, is the cross and the dove. They're the two bodies in the one circle, the two bodies that we have with us right now. Jesus' body of flesh died on the cross and was buried, and it did not rise from the dead. He says that does not happen. He said, you feed it to the vultures, it's finished. But he flew away in the body of the dove there. He flew away in his spiritual body, which he said is what happens. So now we'll get straight into the next chapter, chapter 18, manifesting spiritual love in a material world. And of course that's what happens when you become more committed to just being spiritual now before your body dies. You start to move into your spiritual identity and bring it alive. And then we have to manifest then. We manifest that love. So once you're no longer, worshipping money or power and all these other things, you can start to become more spiritual. Now, once you become more spiritual, then you can really bring some love into the world and, help bring this world into a better condition of love and peace. We don't join armies or carry guns or anything like that. So, spiritual children, manifesting spiritual love in a material world, chapter 18. Matthew 5:42, Jesus taught, "Give to him who asks you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you." Matthew 5:14, "You must become the spiritual light of the world, and no one lights a candle and puts it under a basket, but on a lampstand, so it gives light to all who come near it. Let your spiritual light shine before other children, so they may see your good works that are empowered by the spiritual life force of our loving Creator in you, and give her praise and thanks." The Good Samaritan, the famous Good Samaritan parable. Luke 10:25. A certain lawyer tested Jesus, asking, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus answered him, "What is described in the law? What is your understanding of it?" He answered and said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul and spirit, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself." Jesus replied, "You answered rightly. Do this and you will live." But wanting to be perfectly just, the lawyer asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbour?" Jesus then answered him with this parable. A certain man came down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers, who stripped him and wounded him, then departed, leaving him near death. By chance a certain priest came down that same road. When he saw the man lying there, he passed by on the other side. A Levite also passed that way and came to the place where the man lay, seeing him wounded, and also passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, on his journey, also came to where the wounded man lay, and when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. So he bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them, then placed him on his donkey and brought him to an inn, and took care of him until the next day. Then on the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, "Please take care of him. Whatever more you spend on his care, I will repay you when I return." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbour to the man who was attacked by the robbers? He answered, "He who treated him with kindness and mercy." Jesus said, "Go and do the same." Jesus is speaking to a Jewish audience, and he knows how they despise and look down on Samaritans as being inferior to themselves, not regarding them as true children of God like themselves. He deliberately chooses the despised Samaritan to be the one who shows love and mercy to the wounded man, and describes the arrogant Jews as being inferior, cold-hearted, and uncaring. This would have been a very strong affront to the Jews that were listening, who saw themselves as being the greatest and only special chosen ones of God. Jesus shows here that anyone can be a child of our loving spiritual Creator, empowered by her love, no matter what religion you follow. And that is the truth. Jesus knew the Jews had boxed themselves into a corner by believing only they were the chosen children of our loving Creator, which created a religion of exclusion instead of inclusion. Later on, this Jewish overlay was taken on by the Judeo-Christians, who also said they were the only chosen children of our loving Creator, and only Jesus can save you, creating another religion of exclusion instead of inclusion. Jesus swings a wrecking ball into the delusions of the Jews, or anyone believing only they are the chosen children of our loving Creator, by making the despised Samaritan the honourable hero in this story. He is trying to bring us into the understanding that we are all the children of our loving spiritual Creator, depending on how much love you live out of. The 2 Jews in this story had no love for the wounded man, so were not children of our loving Creator, but the Samaritan freely gave his love to the wounded man, and so was a child of our loving spiritual Creator. He even paid for further care for the man, even though he was a stranger and had no family or cultural ties with him. Anyone who lives out of love for others and hurts no one can enter the heavenly spiritual world. The Samaritan had equanimity of love, and he put aside his own personal activities to give his time to the injured man. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can give someone is our heartbeats, because all of us only have a limited amount to spend. This is self-sacrifice and the selfless loving action of a typical spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator on earth. The two Jews were selfish and would give nothing to the wounded man in need, so no heavenly love could enter them or flow through them to the wounded man. When we are selfish towards others in need, we are starving our own spirits of nourishment instead of receiving unending love by just sharing what we have with others. For whenever love flows out of us to others, it immediately flows in from above, and we are never empty of love. That's the eternal wellspring within us that Jesus said that bubbles up to eternal life, the living waters. Mark 9:35, Jesus taught them, if anyone wants to be first and the greatest, he will be the last of all and servant of all. Matthew 7:16, Jesus said, you will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles. Every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. So you will know them by their fruits. And our loving spiritual Creator also knows all of her children by our fruits of love or lack of them. Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord will enter the heavenly spiritual world of love, but only he who does the will of our loving spiritual Creator will enter. She is love, so we must be children of love. It's that simple. Jesus is simply saying that. The Samaritan will enter, and so can a Jew, a Buddhist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Jain, a Taoist, a Baha'i, a Confucian, a Zoroastrian, a New Age child, an atheist, and any other human child of love and non-violence. It doesn't matter that religious stuff. It's a matter of who you are amongst your religion or your belief system. If you're a child of love, you'll have certain characteristics. If you're not, you won't have them. It's that simple. For the fruit of love always tastes the same, no matter who is producing it. And they are all living spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator. The ticket into heaven has only one word on it: love. Have you got your ticket with you? If you have, don't lose it. If you haven't got yours yet, sell all your hatred, condemnation, selfishness and greed and buy one. And become a universal spiritual child of love of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, just as Jesus became and teaches us to also become. The sheep and the goats parable, Matthew 25:32. Jesus said, children of all nations will appear before our loving spiritual Creator when they die, and they will be separated into two different groups, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. The sheep will be on her right, while the goats will be on her left. Then she will say to those on her right, come, you who are blessed with love, and inherit the heavenly spiritual world of love, prepared for those like you since the beginning of time. For I was hungry, and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the children of love will answer our loving Creator, asking her, loving one, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And she will answer, truly I say to you, whenever you did these things to one of the least of my children, you did it to me. Beautiful. Then she will say to those on her left, when I was hungry, you gave me no food. When I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. Naked, you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not come to me. And they will answer, loving Creator, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked, sick or in prison, and did not help you? And our loving Creator will say to them, whenever you did not do this to one of the least of my children, you did it not to me. Then our loving Creator will say to these self-centered, cold-hearted children lacking in the spirit of love, depart from me, for you are not yet ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world. Then they will leave and experience burning realizations of their own making until they are fully cleansed, while the spiritual children of love will be welcomed into eternal life in the heavenly spiritual world. This is one extremely powerful spiritual message from Jesus. This one extremely powerful spiritual message from Jesus has been a major factor in manifesting all the Christian charities in the world that help all those in need. He clearly establishes and teaches that we are all children of our loving spiritual Creator regardless of race or religion, and she loves and cares about every single one of us. Therefore, if we are to be her true spiritual children on earth of love and peace, we must also love and care for every other child of hers on earth as well. It's a really beautiful parable there. Really well. He's really very clever and intelligent and wise, and he has some beautiful sayings that help you understand what it's all about in such a beautiful way. Right, so I was saying, yes, we're I got lost there. So we have to love everyone on earth as she herself does. To do so means we will be filled with her light and loving life force, as Jesus said, and be spiritually alive. But to not do so would mean we are divided within and will be in darkness, as Jesus warned, and will be dead to the spirit. Being in our spiritual identity is how we share and bring our spiritual Creator's loving life force in us to other children and serve those in need. Our own joy is knowing that by helping others we are growing ever stronger in our true eternal identity as spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator. And we have those in need to thank for helping us to do so by receiving our love we offer to them in any way we can. Just as we must exercise our body of flesh to keep it healthy, fit and strong, we must also exercise our spiritual body and soul mind of love to keep them healthy, fit and strong. But instead of lifting weights or going to a gym, this can only be done through sharing the living, loving life force flowing through us with others in need. It is like a never-ending stream of pure water which sustains and reinvigorates us in spirit the more that flows through us to others. We give it freely and completely, holding nothing back from the flow, and our happiness comes through the seeing others made happy. The list Jesus gives is just a small sample representing the many ways of how we can all manifest spiritual love in this material world depending on each child's circumstances and needs. Throughout our life, our loving Creator will bring us into contact with others in need, family, friends, neighbours or strangers, offering us a further opportunity to grow and become her heavenly spiritual child of love on earth before we pass through our death experience. We should never think this is a burdensome restriction on our life, but rather the gold in our life, thanks to another child being in need of love. Jesus said, "I have not come to be served, but to serve others. And just as I washed your feet, may you also wash the feet of others. He that is greatest among you will be your servant." The greatest manifestations. The greatest demonstrations of manifesting spiritual love in this material world were given by Jesus. There are 21 separate accounts of Jesus healing a child's body of flesh that was injured or diseased in some way, and many others were spoken of but not recorded. 2 accounts of manifesting earthly food, feed the hungry crowds who came to hear him teach, stilling a storm at sea so the disciples did not drown, and he brought 3 children's bodies of flesh back to life as well. He was able to do this, unlike the Jews, because he was a fully awoken spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator, who is only love, unlike the 2-headed God of the Jews. He could then pass her loving spiritual life force that empowered his spiritual body and soul mind of love into the child's body of flesh and restore it just by wanting to relieve that child's suffering, or manifest any material thing he wished for. Our loving Creator provided the material manifestation, as only a divine loving spiritual Creator of love and true life can do. Jesus taught the disciples how to perform these same miracles manifesting spiritual love in this material world and told us we can also do it, but for some reason it has died out. Could it be since Constantine and the early corrupt church leaders converted Christians who only adored a loving Creator back into being Jewish Christians to worship the 2-headed God of the Jews, that the power has gone out of his Judeo-Christian followers? I myself have been attempting to learn how to heal with our loving Creator's life force based on the accounts and words of Jesus himself, as there are few who can do this and teach it these days. Despite my naive but sincere efforts, I have yet to be blessed with such a wonderful gift from above to help other children and myself. If you believe our loving Creator is only love, and not the 2-headed God of the Jews that all Judeo-Christians pray to, perhaps if you try, you will receive this blessing to heal, as Jesus said we would. Reiki has a similar sort of understanding, this sort of life force comes into your body through Reiki. It's a very similar thing. When you think of Jesus and the woman who had the hemorrhage and she was healed, it's very interesting, that account. Big crowds around Jesus, touching him, grabbing onto him. And the woman just reaches through the crowd. She's sitting there and grabs his cloak because she's got deep faith that he's a good child of God. Really good. She's heard about him. He's with sinners. He loves everyone. He's different. She figures if she can just touch his cloak, she'll be healed of this hemorrhage, bleeding hemorrhage. Now, she touches his cloak. He keeps walking, but he stops and says, "Someone touched me. Who was it?" The disciples go, "Someone touched you." They're all grabbing onto you. They're all trying to get a lock of your hair and rip off a bit of your clothing for a keepsake. What do you mean someone touched you? Everyone's touching you. He said, "No, I felt the loving spiritual life force go out of me to someone." And then she comes forth and said it was me. Now, what's interesting about that healing is Jesus had no conscious involvement in her healing whatsoever. The loving life force in our spiritual bodies is coming from this loving spiritual being of consciousness of love, and it's in our spiritual bodies for me and you to use, but we can only use it for love. You can't use it to kill or anything or make guns or bombs. It won't work. You'll have to become a beast of the flesh to do that. But this energy in him, this loving life force, flowed out to the woman. That's because the loving spiritual creator knew her injury, knew that she believed in Jesus being different and loving, kind, and a true child of God. So a loving God, because he was loving. She had the right connection through him to the loving spiritual creator. And the loving spiritual creator moved her living spiritual life force in Jesus. She moved it out of him to the woman. Jesus wasn't even involved in giving it to her at all. So the way I look at it, and he says, of course, have faith, ask, believe, and you'll receive. You've got to have faith that she exists and this can happen. That's part of it too. But the interesting thing is, the divine loving one saw her faith in Jesus, and Jesus was not even involved consciously at all. To me, that means we've all got this spiritual life force in us, and we can all let it flow out to someone and help heal them. That's the way I look at it. That's how I'm practicing. But I haven't succeeded yet. I can't even heal my own body of a fungal infection. So but I keep trying. As Jesus said, don't stop praying, don't stop trying to learn how to heal. So it's a very interesting dynamic, that. Manifesting sounds. The most numerous way Jesus manifested spiritual love in this material world was by making sounds. These sounds formed words, and those words formed meanings. And those meanings, when understood and followed, transform us into becoming a spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world and lead us all home. This was the most important endeavour Jesus undertook, to bring us all out of our suffering by becoming spiritual like himself, and be welcomed at the end of our earthly journey into the heavenly spiritual world of love. We should share his words and spiritual way of love and non-violence with other children any chance we get. But we only offer this spiritual teaching, we never force it onto anyone. Making sounds. Love one another as yourself. Her love rises on the good and the evil. Her love is like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust. Your love must be as perfect as this love. That is how you must be, Christopher, to be a spiritual child. If I didn't have those sounds and those words and the meanings and understand the meanings, how would I know how to be spiritual? That's a great gift, the words. As he said 17 times in the 5 Gospels, he who listens to my words and understands them will pass through death to life. It's his words that save you. The greatest manifestation, the greatest personal manifestation that Jesus performed of spiritual love in a material world was to allow his temporary body of flesh to be brutally killed by the Jewish leaders and buried in order to appear in his full spiritual body to the disciples after his body of flesh died. Although his new spiritual body was no longer material and they were unsure who he was able to appear to them in a similar form as his old body of flesh and talk with them, so they realized it really was him. This was the manifestation of all that he taught to them. He appeared to them in his spiritual body. We've all got one. Get into it before your other body dies. This was the important message the disciples were literally shown by Jesus to share with us all. That our body of flesh dies and is nothing but food for the vultures. Jesus said this himself. It's in the Gospels. The Jewish Christians don't teach you that. But we have another spiritual body of love that can live on in heaven if we have become at one with it on earth. Rarely are spiritual children or angels from heaven allowed to appear to us to see them. Jesus was given an exemption to appear briefly to the disciples due to his great personal sacrifice and love for us all. May we all manifest the spiritual loving life force sustaining our own spiritual bodies and souls in whatever way we can to help other children in need. It may just be loving your children and providing for them until they can fend for themselves, caring for your elderly parents when they can no longer care for themselves, helping close friends and neighbours who are in need of help, stopping to sit with a homeless child on the street and offer them some food or drink, or other essential things they may need. You may become a volunteer at any of the charity organisations you wish to be a part of by serving in an op shop or any other loving way that charities help others. You may join a human rights cause, anti-war group, an environmental group to protect nature, or simply donate money to a worthy cause. Never stop caring about other children, and be on the lookout for an opportunity to be of service to anyone in need, for they are sent from heaven to you to keep your spirit of love alive. Love is a flowing life force. Make sure it's flowing out to others. Just do whatever you can. We're all limited. God is love. Love is life. We are spiritual riders on an earthly horse, at one in purpose. Heaven's love flows through us to all. That's what I reckon anyway. So this is what Jesus is simply saying. Two bodies, get into the spiritual one. The body of flesh dies, bury it, throw it to the vultures, burn it, doesn't matter, there's nothing in it. It's the spiritual one that has to be alive, and it must be clean. You see, this is the thing. Clean the inside of the cup out, Jesus said, that's the problem. Buddha said, clean the inside of your mind out with the dirt, that's the problem. Then you'll have what's already there. Your spiritual body's already with you, but there are things that are blocking it. You put things in the way. The wellspring that bubbles up you with beautiful, clear, crystal clear water of eternal loving life force, you may have dumped a lot of stinking filth and rubbish on it. Murder, stealing, hating, all this stuff. That blocks the wellspring. You can't receive it. It poisons the water. Or you might be teaching poisonous things, like the Jewish Christians who teach that Jesus is coming back on the clouds to starve people to death and put sores on children's bodies and start wars. That is a stinking poison that they put into the wellspring of all children. It's disgusting. And they have to stop doing that. The Catholic Church I was born into, they have to stop doing that, rip it out. And all the other churches. You're poisoning the teachings of Jesus, a child of the divine loving one in heaven. You're poisoning them. Stop doing that. My mother's worst swear word was bum. Oh, bum. I could think some other swear words I'd like to say, but of course we can't on YouTube. And of course you see all the good, beautiful charities are there in the Jewish Christian churches. But that doesn't excuse them from poisoning and slandering Jesus and his teachings. There's no excuse for that. I'm just a gardener, and I knew this when I was 16. So come on, wake up. And be honest. Cut the Bible in two and stick the Jewish religion on the shelf with the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the book of the Sikh prophets, all the other religions. It's another religion. Different God. Two-headed. Rip the book of Revelations out and burn it, or stick it in the book of Daniel if you want to, because it's a Jewish book. It's not Christian. Then you might have a chance of just moving with Jesus and his loving message and parables, the Good Samaritan, etc., etc. Love. She is only love. I'm only love, he says. He said to Philip, if you see me, you see the loving Creator. Jesus never hurt anyone. He was a pacifist. Non-violent. He was spiritual. He had a spiritual body that was fully alive. It was awakened. He was enlightened and full of light, as he says. May you love your way to heaven, because there isn't any other way you're going to get in. And I'll try to do it too. Bye.